coming to order. Welcome to meeting number 106 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Official Languages, pursuant to Standing Order 1083 and the motion adopted by the committee on Wednesday, September 20, 2023. The committee resumed its study on federal funding for official language minority post-secondary institutions. So we should finish up today with this study, and we have witnesses with us. But before we get started, I'd just like to provide a brief overview of the way that we can avoid acoustic incidents. We're, of course, fully familiar with all of this. Most people are in person today. And please make sure that your earpiece is on the coaster in order to avoid any acoustic shocks. To the extent possible, one person please speak at a time and wait for the chair to recognise you, and that will help to avoid interpreters getting injured. So welcome to our witnesses. We have folks before us that we're used to seeing. Regulars, Ms. Julie Boyer, Assistant Deputy Minister, Official Languages, Heritage and Regions, Mr. Timothée Labelle, Director of Intergovernmental Policies and Programs, Official Languages, and it's the Department of Canadian Heritage that will help us to wrap up this study on minority post-secondary language education, which was Mr. Beaulieu's motion. Now, Ms. Boyer, you have the floor for 5 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A period. So the floor is yours. 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. Good morning, members of the committee. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'd like to begin by pointing out that we are meeting on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe peoples, and I have Timothée Labelle with me today, who's the Director of Intergovernmental Policy and Programs in the Official Languages branch of Canadian Heritage. And the Director is responsible for negotiating education agreements with the provinces and funding transfers to learn the minority second language. And I'd like to thank you for inviting us to appear following the appearance of the Minister of Employment, Skills Development and Official Languages, Mr. Randy Boissonnault. A little over a month ago, as part of the study on federal funding for minority post-secondary institutions. Now, I'm not telling you anything new when I say that guaranteeing access to quality post-secondary education in the minority language is a crucial issue for our communities. Indeed, since post-secondary funding is about more than just instruction and teaching, it has a broader reach in terms of community development, improving employment opportunities, which of course helps to address the labour shortage. Now, that said, you know as well as I do that a number of minority language post-secondary institutions in Canada are experiencing funding difficulties. And this issue was raised in the media by stakeholders during the 2022 Pan-Canadian consultations on official languages, our action plan, and during the National Dialogue on Francophone Minority Post-Secondary Education. It's for these reasons that the federal government supports post-secondary education in a multifaceted manner and will continue to do so. One only needs to consider investments to the tune of $128 million to date over 4 years, starting this year, to support post-secondary education in the minority language. Investments that are earmarked under the 2023-2028 action plan that was announced last year. These investments, I would remind you, are in addition to the $30.4 million announced in the 2021 budget for fiscal 2023-2024. In addition, the federal government is working closely with provincial and territorial governments as education falls under their jurisdiction, and of course they are primarily responsible for creating thriving communities from a linguistic standpoint.
Is currently negotiating new bilateral agreements and the protocol for agreements for minority language education and second language instruction with the provincial and territorial governments to support our official language minority communities. Thank you for having us today, and we look forward to answering your questions.
Merci, Madame Boyer. 3 minutes 12.
Thank you, Ms. Boyer. 3 minutes, 12 seconds. First round of questions, 6 minutes apiece for questions and answers. The Deputy Chair of the committee, Mr. Godin, the floor is yours, 6 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson, and thanks to the witnesses. Ms. Boyer, you're a regular. Mr. Lebel, we've seen you on a couple of occasions. Thanks for being here this morning, and thanks for driving from Montreal to Ottawa. I drive from Quebec City to Ottawa on a weekly basis, so I can understand that, well, yours was a slightly shorter trip, but thank you for being here this morning. My first question is for both of you, but also for the clerk, as a matter of fact. There's a Deputy Minister at Canadian Heritage responsible for official languages, Ms. Modou. Normally she's here. Was she invited today?
Parfait.
Perfect. Well, we're glad to have these witnesses with us here today. The clerk has told me that we invited officials at the request of the committee from Canadian Heritage. Apparently, Ms. Modou herself was not available, but folks were sent in her place and they can answer our questions. How much time do I have, Mr. Chair? You ate into it a little bit. Okie doke. No worries. So I have about 5 minutes left. So I'd like to take advantage of your appearance here to ask you the following questions. I'm trying to understand how Canadian Heritage is run. There's no official languages department per se. It's my understanding that official languages fall under the rubric of Canadian Heritage, and there are people in charge of that, like Mr. Labelle. He's responsible for official languages. Now, there's no portfolio per se for official languages. There's no money attached to it. And Mr. Boissonneau always... Could you just explain this for me, how this all works? Yes, of course, it'd be a pleasure, Mr. Chairperson. We have Minister Saint-Onge, who's in charge of Canadian Heritage. And the authorities that are conferred on Ms. Saint-Onge for official languages are given by order and counsel to Minister Boissonneau, who plays that role currently. So all of the money for official languages and to promote bilingualism, support programs for official languages are signed and managed by Minister Boissonneau. So Minister Saint-Onge isn't involved in that. So in my sector, I have official languages and also heritage, museums. I report to Minister Saint-Onge. And when it comes to official languages, it's Minister Boissonneau. Now, what about this order in council that sets out the delegation of powers, the division of powers? I'm not sure that I can put my finger on it right here. On a point of order, Mr. Chair, if I may, says a member, Mr. Siré, the order in council was sent out to all members, and the Prime Minister issued an order in council to give Mr. Boissonneau full responsibility for official languages. So the letter was sent out about a month ago. Perhaps it could be circulated again if Mr. Godin hasn't laid eyes on it. But it's clear what Ms. Boissonneau is saying because, the letter was sent to everyone after all.
Ce document-là, qui confirme ça, bel et bien été envoyé là.
Yes, it was sent out. Do we have the wording when it comes to the division of powers from the Privy Council, i.e., could you please clarify how much time I have left? We have about 4 minutes. No, sorry, 2 minutes. I misspoke. 2 minutes. 2 minutes? Well, but you interrupted me to ask the clerk a question, and then there was a point of order. You're right, Mr. Godin. You are right. And I forgot to stop my stopwatch. My mic wasn't working. But listen, we're going to send out the document that we received back in April to all members of the committee. How much time do I have left after all that? 2 minutes. 2 minutes more. So you're saying I have 4 minutes in total? No. Well, listen. Let's put an end to this. Let's get things straight. 4 minutes 55 has run out on the clock. Time flies, doesn't it? So there was 20 seconds for the point of order, and I had to consult the clerk as regards to your question. So I'll give you another 2 minutes. How's that? A complete 2 minutes, that's it. Period. I'm being generous. Listen, thank you. You're aware of what occurred at this committee, that there were members of the governing party that treated witnesses in an unacceptable manner. Do you think that's unacceptable? I'd like to hear your input on that. Thanks very much for the question, Mr. Chairperson. I really don't feel comfortable answering that question. It's a matter of personal opinion, and officials here appear to present the facts. Well, Ms. Boyer, I didn't expect anything else from you, and that's okay. And you're upholding your code of ethics, and that's a tribute to all the credit to you. Now, I'd like to refer to a motion that's been sent to all members of the committee that is in good order, and which, in my opinion, will show you where we stand as the Conservative Party of Canada to get back the time that's been wasted and lost. And I think everyone's familiar with what occurred on the 6th of May, 2024, where a member in attendance this morning treated a witness or witnesses in an unacceptable manner, who generously and graciously come before this committee to share their knowledge with a view to enabling us legislators to do our work, and particularly with respect to the post-secondary education study. Now, you'll gather, Mr. Chairperson, that my colleague, who was quite vulgar in the way that he treated the witnesses, and it was quite unparliamentary. And the way that he went about apologising, it was actually trivialised the situation and the incident. It took him 4 years to apologise, and he only apologised when there was a point of order, and he was given the floor, and he shouldn't have been using that tool of a point of order to make apologies. He said that the witnesses were full of ... XYZ, and on Tuesday there was a journalist who was here in the room. He said he wouldn't apologise to him, and then on Wednesday, when he came out of the Liberal caucus and took part in a press scrum, he said that if he'd upset or hurt, or I don't know, I can't recall what the exact wording was, that he'd apologise for that. And the very next day, hold on, Mr. Godin, are you moving a motion right now? And if so, which motion is it? I'll read it out loud, and then I'll come back to the backdrop that I was providing. Yes, let's read it out officially, please. And I always like to do things the right way, says Mr. Godin. Now, my motion was sent out to members on the 10th of June. Considering that the committee has accumulated lost working hours due to the obstruction by Liberal MPs who are trying to protect MP Francis Drouin and prevent his removal from the committee, it is resolved that the committee requests the Chair to hold at least 5 meetings between July 8, 2024 and September 13, 2024 in order to address the study on federal funding for minority language post-secondary institutions, as well as to finalise the report on economic development of official language minority communities and the report on language obligations related to the process of staffing and making appointments to key positions. There you have it, Mr. Chairperson.
Je vais continuer.
I will continue. You know the process. We've lost 7 meetings because the Liberals do not want us to vote on the motion of Mr. Beaulieu from the Bloc. Point of order. I'd like to ask Mr. Godin the following. Is it the same motion that was moved during our previous meetings? What's the point of order? I'd like to know if it's the same wording. Yeah, it's a point of order if a previous identical or almost identical motion has been moved before. In this committee or other committees? In this committee, including this committee? Has a similar motion been moved in at other committees? I think we've been through this process not too long ago. If it's at other committees, it's less interesting, but if it's here, yes. But since there's not been a similar motion moved here, I give you the floor. You say that his point of order is in order. According to me, it's not the case. The chair, in his point of order, I thought he mentioned a motion that had been moved at other committees, but it's not the case. I know you're a lawyer. I respect your decision. Mr. Chair, I think it's important to inform the public that the Liberals are filibustering because they do not want a motion that has been moved. I think the least we can do is to respect the vote. And then I'll get back to something that we accepted. Last week, we accepted to vote to allow the committee to continue in its study on post-secondary education and allow our analysts to work. We have values and convictions. We do not think that we can allow this as long as this Liberal is sitting at the table. We need to see our values respected. The 3 opposition parties, we all have the same opinions. We respect the individuals, but we do not respect his actions, and his actions are not acceptable. The form of the actions and what's not acceptable are his convictions and the way he apologized. That's my personal opinion, but I needed to mention it. We should not make an exception. We did it for the official language commissioner. Are you talking? What exception are you talking about? Are you talking about the subcommittee meeting on a minority language? And are you also talking about what Mr. Beaulieu suggested? I'm saying this for those who are following us. If we hadn't made that exception, well, Mr. Drouin would have the floor. When we adjourned at the last meeting, we said that Mr. Drouin would have the floor. It's not that important right now. So when we made that exception, I don't know what you're driving at, but today we're meeting to complete the study before the end of June. At some point, I will need to make a decision on what's going to happen next Monday, because right now we put on hold a debate. I will be listening to you, but you need to know that we're opening a motion within parentheses, and when we adjourned the debate, we decided to continue during the next meeting. So we called officials from the department, but at some point the chair will need to make a decision on the way we adjourned during the last meeting. We cut off those who were on the list, beginning by Mr. Drouin for this. Mr. Chair, this was an excellent summary, but we made an exception for the Commissioner on Official Languages. We respect our democratic institution. It was in order to study his report and to hear him here. You made an excellent summary. As I said, we had a discussion. You accepted a vote. The Liberals accepted to vote on a specific request to be able to continue. And we, the Conservatives, we voted against. We have principles, we have values, we are consistent. For as long as the MP from Glengarry Prescott Russell will sit at the committee, we, the Conservatives, and this is unfortunate for minority language communities, we will not accept the presence of that gentleman. Following that, my motion is clear. On Monday, we have lost 7 meetings, and at the expense of minority language communities. It's not the opposition who decided to waste 7 meetings. It's the Liberals because they do not accept a vote. In those circumstances, I have the obligation to move a motion to be able to be able to continue in the interest of minority language communities. To me, this situation is not acceptable, but the situation has been provoked by stubbornness. They'll say that the opposition is stubborn. But who caused the situation? It's not the NDP. It's not the Bloc. It's not the Conservatives. It's a member of the governing party. He treated the witnesses in an unacceptable manner. So our institution needs to be respected. We challenged your decision who said that it was not in order. We won. I respected the decision of the last meeting. You need to respect our decision. I think we need to reflect on the issue. I'll stop there, and I'll wait for your comments. But, Mr. Chair, we have 3 studies. The report on post-secondary institutions of Mr. Beaulieu, the report on minority language communities, and the report on economic development that we can do this summer. No one would like to come back in the summer, but this has been caused by those from the other side who are filibustering. We want to continue. The solution is simple. The members of the government should allow us MPs to vote, and it'll be solved. It's as simple as that. Let's respect the decision of the committee. if the committee decides that he can stay, we'll stop there. If the committee decides that you need to report to the chair, and then we'll see what the chair decides. I'll repeat what I said. The three opposition parties have all the same opinions. So, as my filibustering colleagues said, I extend a hand. This time I extend a hand to my colleagues to solve the problem and resume in a good way next time. There's only a couple of meetings between the end of June. I think it'll be a real gift to Canadians during St. John Baptist. We'll be able to say that this is solved, and we'll be able to work for all Canadians. I have the task and the privilege to respect the procedures and the standing orders. As long as we follow the standing orders, I agree. Apparently, all rules have been followed. I think I have Ms. Fauzier or Mr. Dalton. Point of order. We have our witnesses here. Should we let them leave if we have a list of speakers? With all due respect, it's 9:49. We have 27 minutes left. So do you want to discuss and miss the opportunity to hear our witnesses for the second time? Out of respect for our witnesses. Does the committee want to let the witnesses leave? I'm asking the committee. I'm not asking you personally. Should we let our witnesses leave, or do you want them to stay? I have Mr. Jenner, Mr. Dalton, Ms. Cooley. 30 seconds. I'll speak for 30 seconds. If this is it the wish of the committee to let our witnesses go? Mr. Godin, my colleague said that you have to be consistent. I'll interrupt you. I'll interrupt you, Mr. Godin. This is the chair asking you. Do you have objections? No, Mr. Chair. Mr. Godin, I'm not giving you the floor. The next one to have the floor is Mr. Jenner. You're asking a question to the committee members, and I'll answer. He'll be speaking for 30 seconds. If all speakers can speak for 30 seconds, the witnesses will be able to be heard. They spent 7 weeks filibustering. I will give you the floor. I've been polite and diplomatic to the benefit of our witnesses. If there is no unanimous consent to let our witnesses go, we'll ask them to stay, and then we'll listen to the next speakers. We have Mr. Dente and Mr. Jenner. Thank you, Chair. I guess our witnesses are being paid, so I don't think it's an issue. Since the beginning of this mishmash, I've been quite discreet. It's been going on for quite a few weeks. I did it deliberately because I thought that maybe the Liberals would understand the wish of the committee. So what's the wish of the committee? The three opposition parties moved a motion and they hope for a vote.
And they filibustered so that we actually don't vote. I'd like to remind all members of the committee that since the Liberals have been in power since 2015, we've been told that committees are independent. And in my opinion, well, that may be a hollow statement. Perhaps committees at the end of the day are just a reflection of the political parties that make them up. But the fact of the matter is that committees are free to act as they see fit. But one thing's for sure. In politics and under our parliamentary system, committees, and the proof is in the pudding. We have employees here who are communicating with other levels of their political party, not just the Liberal Party. And that's common practice, and we include ourselves in that. Now, political parties, they determine themselves what they'd like to see as the top priority for each and every committee. And that's common practice, as I said. But what we've been experiencing since early May, and here we are in late June at the end of the parliamentary session, there's been filibustering over the actual issue of the independence of this committee. Were the committee truly independent, as the Liberals have been arguing for so many years now, well, then we'd vote on the motion that my colleague moved to expel Mr. Drouin from the committee. There's no reason that we should be discussing this still today. Now, if the Liberals really take to heart that notion that committees are truly independent, well, then we should be able to cut to the chase and realise that any decision that we make in this committee is at arm's length of the party in power. So we should be able to basically cut to the chase and vote on this motion. I don't want to go on and on about this issue, but for a long time now, I've been asking myself if the independence of committees is really a guiding principle for the Liberal Party. And I don't think so. Because what's going on is, in fact, there's someone else pulling the strings behind the scenes in their party. And I'd like to take my hat off in passing to all the staff that work here and the members themselves, but obviously there are people pulling the strings behind the scenes. Sorry, if I could just cut you off. Could you come back to the crux of the motion, please, in your arguments? Well, basically what I'm saying is that we should vote on this as quickly as possible, but also try and recoup this time that's been wasted for the benefit of our official language minority communities across Canada and Quebec. And I think that we should meet this summer in order to recoup the time wasted. Thank you, Mr. Généreux. Mr. Dalton, the floor is yours. Just a couple of remarks about Mr. Godin's motion, if I may. Listen, we've wasted 7 meetings now. They're gone. And I think it's quite appropriate that we would sit during the summer and have 7 meetings out of respect for the importance of the work that we're doing here at the Official Languages Committee. and we've heard all of these stories, long-winded comments about people's twice-removed cousins and in France, and it was highly interesting, but we wasted a lot of time in doing so. Of course, my family lineage is important, but honestly, let's be honest, we've wasted a lot of time here. And the reason we banded together as opposition parties is so that we can get to a vote as quickly as possible, and that's what I'd like to see happen. Thank you very much, Mr. Dalton. Ms. Cousy, the floor is yours. Well, you can imagine that I agree with my colleague, Mr. Godin. Now, currently I'm a member of two committees, obviously the Official Languages Committee, the mighty OGO as well, Government Operations. And we've had a lot of meetings during constituency weeks when we're supposed to be in our ridings normally, and also during other adjournments. Of course, we have to get the job done. And as my colleagues have just said, we've wasted 7 meetings. So 5 additional meetings is perfectly reasonable given all the time that's been wasted over this whole affair. Now, I've shared a bit of my life story when I've taken the floor before this committee, and I confess to that. But I think this is perfectly reasonable. I've seen it happen with other committees, and I think it's a way of catching up on the work that we have to do, and that's what OGO did, the mighty OGO. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So I'd support Mr. Godin's motion, and I hope that all committee members agree that we have to recoup some of the time lost this summer to do the job, to get the job done, the job that we are here to do before this ill-fated affair first came about. Now, on that note, I'd call for the vote, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Donc, on va continuer avec la liste qui était déjà.
So, our list. Mr. Beaulieu, you're up next. We agree that a lot of time has been wasted because the Liberals just won't accept the majority opinion, and this is deplorable. And we're not going to support the Conservatives' motion all the same because we're not convinced that there won't be more filibustering over this issue. So there must be other ways of recouping this wasted time, to my mind. Mr. Drouin, Ms. Ashton, and then Mr. Seche. Now, I'd like to speak to the motion itself. It's a tad unusual that on the 8th of July and the 2nd of December, I'm talking to the motion here. On a point of order, Mr. Chair. Go ahead, Mr. Godin. If I can speak, please. We're going to fall in line with you at the end of the day. Now, Mr. Chair, are we referring here to motions in other committees, or are we going to stick to motions from our own committee? I'd just like you to remind members of that fact, please. Well, that's not necessarily a proper point of order, Mr. Godin. But if coincidentally there's some kind of similarities with what is occurring here as elsewhere, well, that's all well and good, but it's not really a point of order. Mr. Drouin, the floor is yours. This is an unusual practice. The Conservatives want to issue a press release in the upcoming days stating that members of this committee don't want to work over the summer. We've seen this tactic before. It doesn't impress us, and we're going to vote against it. Thank you, Ms. Ashton. The floor is yours. Yes, I'll be concise. Suffice to say that we fully agree that the members' behaviour towards the witnesses was really problematic, and we haven't changed our mind on that. But we don't agree with the motion per se. Of course, there are urgent meetings on the basis of national security issues, for example, which will have to be held. But all that said, I hope that we can get on to our actual real committee meetings as quickly as possible. But nevertheless, we can't support this specific motion. Mr. Serre. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be quick. I'll have a lot more to say on Monday. But I have a big riding of 32,000 kilometres, and we'll be spending our summer meeting with constituents, and it's important that that work be done. And of course, there is an overlap with motions from other committees. They're the same dates. But listen, it's between the months of September and June that we are supposed to conduct our studies collectively. And this isn't a matter of life and death or national securities. Let's just come back to Mr. Godin's motion. How do we know that the Liberals aren't going to continue to filibuster until we vote on this motion? And the motion states clearly that, and it's important that Canadians understand this, first of all, it wasn't in order. The committee doesn't have the right to tell the... On a point of order, please, Mr. Chair. But that's a fact. One person at a time, please. My colleague said that the motion is out of order. And we challenged your decision, and that's not a point of order. Someone's just recounting the facts at this point. Mr. Serre. Well, if you go by the Green Book, and Mr. Godin says that he follows the rules, well, the Green Book states that a committee cannot tell a whip what to do. Of course, we'd like to do that, and if the precedent were set, well, we've seen the Conservatives do this kind of thing on many occasions in the past. But at the end of the day, this is not the committee's role to act in this manner. So to our television viewers, the motion states that Mr. Godin on 2 occasions submitted and this was referred to this morning, that this motion that we're supposed to vote on here is to go back to the House. That's an important section of the motion. It's not even about Mr. Drouin anymore. The motion states that if we vote on the motion, well, then the motion will be referred back to the House of Commons. And this is what the Conservatives are doing on a weekly basis. In English, we talk about a concurrence report. Yeah, if we vote on this motion, it'll be referred back to the House, and it's important to understand that. If Mr. Godin could please keep quiet, I have the floor. I know he's not used to listening to other people, but it's high time that he does pay attention to what others have to say, because if this goes back to the House, it's going to bog things down at the House, and that's what Mr. Blanchet and Mr. Poilievre want. They don't want the budget to get through. They don't want the full economic statement to get through. There's a lot of good legislation up in the House, and if this official languages motion goes back to the House on a point of order, Mr. Chairperson, listen. The standing order states that we have to deal with the motion in question and not other motions. Mr. Godin. Listen, I gave your colleague a bit of leeway, but listen, it's my role as chair and to be fair. The onus is on me to be fair and to give everyone and treat everyone equally. So, Mr. Serret, I'll give you the floor.
Laissez votre collègue généreux le faire.
Just I let your colleague, Mr. Genero, talk. But if we're not on topic, I let him know, just like I did with your colleague. As I said, this is a reminder. If the motion is put to the vote as the position wants, it goes back to the chamber. It goes back to the chamber, and it delays all the work at the chamber, the budget, etc. Mr. Poilievre and Mr. Blanchet already said that they wanted to do filibustering. We've had the Minister for Official Languages here. We've had officials here. We make officials come back, and the whole committee agreed on that. Mr. Godin didn't ask a single question on post-secondary education. He asked a question about the order. He asked a question about Mr. Douin's comments concerning the officials. With all due respect, let's move on. Let's focus on our study. We're going to vote on this morning's motion, definitely, but there's a lot to do. And Mr. Blanchet and Mr. Poilievre's games need to end because we need to pass laws at the House. Let's vote if there are no other comments. Mr. General, Ms. Clark. Yes, let's be precise. We've talked about many motions, but this is today's motion. Considering that the committee has accumulated lost working hours due to the obstruction by Liberal MPs who are trying to protect MP Francis Drouin and prevent his removal from the committee, it is resolved that the committee requests the chair to hold at least 5 meetings between July 8, 2024 and September 13, 2024 to address the study on federal funding for minority language post-secondary institutions, as well as to finalize the report on economic development of official language minority communities and the report on language obligations related to the process of staffing or making appointments to key positions.
Diacono.
Contre.
Madame Châtel. Madame Châtel, votre vote?
No.
Monsieur Sanson.
Contre.
Monsieur Serré.
Contre.
Monsieur Dalton.
Pour.
Monsieur Généreux.
Pour.
Monsieur Godin.
Pour.
Madame Cousy.
En faveur.
Monsieur Beaulieu.
Contre.
Madame Ashton.
Contre.
Yeas pour 7, nays contre... pardon, c'est le contraire. Nays contre 7, yeas pour 4.
Merci. Merci. Donc,
Thank you. Mr. Godin's motion is defeated. You have 1 minute left. I'd like to go back to the initial question. Could you explain the following? The Minister for Official Languages is under the aegis of the Minister for Heritage. In your opinion, the Minister for Canadian Heritage, should the Minister for Canadian Heritage be heard here? It's up to the committee to decide on the witnesses. Following the invitation to appear to the Minister for Canadian Heritage. The Minister declined the invitation. Is that acceptable? Your time is up, unfortunately. We'll have to adjourn soon. We met upon the request of the committee to submit our report next Monday. Do we want to do that in camera? It's about the next study, the continuum on education. It'll take 15, 20 minutes. Do we want to do that in camera or not? We need to discuss the report to present to this committee. So our next meeting will be about that, and we'll pick up from where we left. It'll be in camera, but it has to be submitted to the committee. Yes. So what we're suggesting is an in-camera meeting to get input from the subcommittee. Is that okay? Let us adjourn on the same conditions as during the last meeting.